All right. So, welcome USFFL. We are live. I am Tim Irvin, Commissioner. I'm with Anthony Tangora, and we are bringing you tonight the USFFL playoff preview. So that's going to be where we're going to go through a few things. We're going to discuss the Coach of the Year. We're going to set up the playoffs as well, go division by division, even a little anecdote on every team, and we're going to kind of break it down. Then we'll go ahead and talk about who we're going to predict to win the playoffs and the Super Bowl. So let's go ahead and get started with that. You ready to go on that, Anthony?
Ready to go.
All right, so we're going to start with a look at the Coach of the Year. I'm going to set it up briefly just for those who may not be aware. Coach of the Year, the tournament for play teams that are not in the playoffs. So the first way to qualify is you can't be a playoff team. Okay. And if you're not a playoff team, then all we do is we're looking for you to win more games in the replay than your team really did in real life. So if we look at the first line there, the Jaguars only won one game in real life. So all they needed to do was win two in order to qualify for that tournament, and they did already. So that's why they are in green. The teams in yellow are ones that still need one more win to qualify. And then in red, you can look at the negative numbers there and see how many more wins they need in order to qualify for that tournament. So, Anthony, now that I've kind of laid that out, we're looking at the AFC Coach of the Year. Break down some of the teams you think have a shot to get there.
Well, most of these teams do, except most of these teams are also competing for the playoffs, sort of as you said. So,
Right.
with this early in the season, Coach of the Year is a little bit more difficult to parse. Jags at the top certainly will be in there, and we'll get into them in detail soon. Patriots likely headed to the playoffs. Bengals likely on the outside looking in for the playoffs, so they could certainly be in the mix. And the Coach of the Year has a little wrinkle where you always go in healthy, and that's going to be helpful to somebody like the Bengals if for example, their quarterback were to get hurt again. The Texans also have trouble making the regular playoffs. They're in the hunt, still have a chance, but they'd be a likely participant. Then Chargers have a good shot at the playoffs. Broncos are in the hunt, but sort of outside looking in, so we could see them make an appearance. It's great to see the Jets there.
Yeah, I'd love to see the Jets get 3 wins down the stretch here. That'd be kind of cool. Get them into the COY.
And then the Raiders also in a troubling spot for the regular playoffs, but they have a long way to go once you get down to.
Yeah, it looks like everybody else would need pretty much to run the table if they were going to qualify. But that still leaves us with the Jaguars already clinched, and then real possibilities for what? Bengals, Texans, Broncos, and outside chance for Jets too. So that's quite a sizable field. We might even have 3 or 4 participants there. Let's take a look at the NFC. And what are you looking at here, Anthony?
The one thing to remember for all of them too is that we're taking that extra wild card this year in the regular playoffs.
Oh yeah,
there's that extra wild card slot, and everything we went through in the AFC is sort of immune to that, which is good. Not everything, but the ones that we covered, saying likely to be in, and the outside looking in for the playoffs. So it's not going to be 4 to 5 from the AFC side, and that's a good number. Better participation than last year, as far as I can remember. In the NFC, Falcons likely to get in the playoffs. Lions right in the hunt for the playoffs. Giants leading their division. So the first 3 can sort of good chance of scratching off at least 2 of them. The Eagles, tough road to the playoffs. So they could easily get a COY berth, just 1 win away. Niners, I think, also have an interesting path to the regular playoffs. That's possible.
Sure.
But if not, postseason is well within reach. Panthers just 2 wins away from making. Seahawks will be in the playoffs. Rams will be in the playoffs. Cowboys, that's an interesting one. Need 3 wins. Tough road ahead to pick up those 3, especially if Dalton is good for quarterbacking a bit. But
might be a thinner field in the NFC than the AFC, because really the only ones that the Lions, if they don't make it to the regular playoffs, the Eagles are probable, and maybe even the Niners. Panthers would need 2 wins though, and Seahawks and Rams. There's some playoff teams, and I don't know. We might only have maybe 4 from both sides, but that'll be kind of fun. We always like to have that tournament at the end of the year.
Might have
Where,
3. And the seeding for Coach of the Year, Tim, you probably know off the top of your head, it is based on win-loss record, right? Not your differential.
as far as what your ability to be eligible for the tournament.
So if you had 3, one would get a bye, right? So
yeah, I understand your question now. So if you go by the actual Constitution, it isn't clearly defined. It basically just says the commissioner has the role and responsibility to set up the bracket however is fair. So depending on how many teams are there, I would design it. If it was 3 teams, yeah, I would use regular NFL tiebreakers, and the best team
that would
be the one that gets the bye. That's
It's
how you have to do it.
Isn't going to stick a rule on that.
We would certainly solve it one
you can make an argument for both, right? If your
conference at a
differential
time.
super high, then maybe you think you should have.
All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the AFC East. We'll start there with the New England Patriots. They're leading the division 8-3, 2-game lead over the Bills. They do have that loss against the Bills this year. It's interesting, kind of like the Patriots last year, 30th in offensive yards. They don't put up a lot of yards, but they're still 16th in points scored offensively. And that's because they've got all those Belichickian intangibles. League best turnover ratio for the Patriots, and third lowest as far as the penalties that they get. So it's a team that's going to be really dangerous. What do you think about their position there, Anthony?
It's can you hear me okay, first of all, Tim? Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me? I think the volume might be down.
Anthony?
I'm here. I'm talking. Yes, I'm here. I'm talking. Can you hear me?
I'm not hearing you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you. Yes, can hear you fine. Let's take that in.
Is it on my end?
Hear you.
There you are. I'm hearing you. I'm sorry, Anthony. Go ahead.
All right. The Pats. So, I've been looking at the Pats cards closely lately because I'm facing them this week, and the Chargers are facing the Patriots, and so I've been spending a lot of time looking at the cards. It's a really interesting team, probably the most unique set of cards, I would say, in the set, at least those that I've gone on deep dive, and the reason is because of the very just fantastic pass defense. Short and long pass defense is very strong. 0-man long pass is strong. Just no completions on 8, no completions on 9. You don't challenge the defender, I think, until 11-12. Long gains 2 through 4. Interception, no men there is something like 2 through 6, 11-12. Interception, 1 man there is 2 through 9, 12. So it's stacked. And that gives that free safety some license to roam. And when you have an extra man on D like that, it's effectively what it is. That gives the Pats some pretty unique advantages. That being said, on the opposite side of the ball, hampered by Cam Newton, a lot of blanks on short pass, 5, 6, 7 wrong. Short pass is incomplete. Long pass right, the only completion is on 2. Yeah, I have spent some time looking at these cards.
It's tough to throw with that offense.
Yeah,
sometimes.
so it's a very interesting puzzle that Dennis has had to sort of fit together. And he's done a really nice job on it. They have 3 really good runners in the backfield with Michelle and Burkhead and Damian Harris. All 3 are very good. Burkhead's very good running right, probably the best right runner among the group. The others definitely better running wrong. And he's limited carries among them, which is sort of forced a rotation in terms of overuse. But they're pretty much interchangeable parts. So
they're all good.
That combination of run and defense is pretty strong, and you're going to find, as we look at all the playoff teams, running and defense does make a pretty big difference. The best teams out there, the Packers, the Seahawks, they've been running.
Right.
The Steelers,
more balance for the teams that are winning. You're right.
Yeah, no doubt. And the Patriots are right in that group, but the cards are a noticeable notch down. Although they play a similar style, overall the cards are a notch down. So Dennis has done a really nice job taking that run and defense mold and producing a bunch of wins out of it. And he'll get more wins with them. I'm convinced, but it might be difficult to compete with the tippy top, which is why I think for the Patriots, if you're looking at this in the AFC East, you have a lead on Buffalo. Um, that's 3 games now. That's of course not an insurmountable lead for the Bills, but if you're the Patriots,
Well, it's actually a 2-game lead right now, but you're right. They do have the loss, so it's like a 3-game lead. I see what you're saying. Sure.
play hard for that number 1 seed. There's only one bye in each conference.
So then, what about the Bills? So the Bills, you're giving them a chance to win this division, or
it's a pretty tough road for the Bills. But from just to finish, I thought in the Patriots, it's the bye is more valuable to the Pats than anybody else at the top of the conference because of the card disadvantage that they have. They'd likely be an underdog in that round of playoffs if they had to play them. So just to skip that round, they have that opportunity right now, sitting tied with the Steelers at the top of the conference, would be pretty valuable. Buffalo's in a tough spot now, a couple games out, and all of a sudden surrounded by teams in the wild card race that have just better situations. So it might be a bit difficult for the Bills. The Bills have been throwing a lot. The Bills, there's no other team out of every play you can choose among all the teams. So that's, let's see, that's you have how many basic plays? You have 7 basic plays to choose from and you multiply that by 32. Among all of that combination, the number 1 play call across the entire league is a Bills short pass. They've been
really? Well, and Josh Allen leads the USFL in pass yards, so that makes sense.
And in all that passing, it's an indication of a weak running game, and in a fairly decent defense. In my honest opinion, watching with the eyeball test, I think Josh Allen was actually a bit undercarded. He seemed to me like a classic throwback 87, 86 sort of quarterback that would have big yards on short pass, meaning over 15 in more than a few chances, and really strong long gains on long pass. He's a definite clear spot below where he should be, and I think when you add it all up, Buffalo's in a pretty tight spot. It's going to be difficult to back into a wild card.
So let's move on to the Dolphins. They're 4-7. So obviously you got to run the table if you're going to make the playoffs. I think it's kind of a long shot, especially when you consider that they've got 4 wins, and all 4 wins are against teams that have they're 2-win teams or better. So their 4 wins are against the 2-win Jaguars, the 2-win Cardinals, and the 0-win Jets. So the Dolphins haven't really beat anybody yet. So it would be a large haul for them to get there. But they are the least penalized team in the league, less than 3 per game this year. And I thought it was interesting seeing that Fitzmagic actually is second best with his 101.9 QB rating, nestled right between Russ Wilson and Aaron Rodgers there. So what about the Dolphins when you look at that team?
Well, I mean, just speaking of undercarded teams, they had 10 wins in real life. Right?
Yep.
I faced them. It's not carded to be a 10-win team. Just not. Even if Fitz is in, that Fitz card is not vintage Fitz. He's had better cards than what he has. Tua is limited in being able to throw downfield. Sure, the penalties are on their side, but there's no real strong running back to offset the weaknesses of quarterback. The defense is somewhat solid, and that's nice, but not enough to actually be a game-changing defense. So Tony's had an uphill climb, I think, to try to get to 10 wins. I don't know that it was ever in the cards for that squad, and that makes it near. Obviously, coach of the year is pretty much out of the question now to get to 11 wins. Not going to happen.
Yeah, that's true.
And the playoff road is very, very difficult with the.
Yeah, you were right on the fact that they're a little bit undercarded, and Tony's been kind of having to work his way through that. So what about the Jets? So 0-11, obviously, kind of a tough luck team. I feel bad for him. Also, you hope he can get a win in there, but unfortunately, the Jets do have the toughest remaining schedule by win percentage, 709 win percentage left here on their schedule. So that works against them. But obviously, rooting for the Jets. They've had some close ones they could have won, including against me.
Should have won.
Yeah. Should have won. Oh, absolutely should have beat me.
Onside kick galore, right? The Jets, you talk about their schedule. Yeah, it's the number 1 schedule in terms of when we talk about strength of schedule tonight, we're talking about stratomatic records, our records from our league driving our strength of schedule stats, not the
Correct.
NCAA, which I think is a tad better than using IRL. But a tough schedule going forward. But for the entire year, week 1 to 17, it's the second hardest schedule. So you pair that set of cards with the second toughest schedule in the league.
Yeah.
And it's a recipe for trying to claw your way to get a win. But
No doubt.
if you can find a way to put 3 out of 5 here, and you're in the COI. So
And I'd love to see that for them.
Yeah.
You got to root for the coaches that are playing those teams that are challenging, to say the least.
One of the best parts about the league. The Jet staff have something to play for here in week 13. They're 0-11. That's great.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the Coach of the Year tournament. I agree. So let's move on to the next division, the AFC North. We've got the Steelers up on top, and of course, it's all defense. If you've been paying attention, they lead the league scoring defense 15.4 a game, but they're on a 5-game win streak right now, and in that 5-game win streak, their defense is allowing just 7.2 points per game. 7.2. They've allowed only 6 passing touchdowns all season long. So their defense is carrying them. They've got the undefeated division record right now, and 1-game lead on the Browns. And of course, with 2 wins against the Ravens, they're in good shape to probably walk away with this division, especially with that defense. What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, they've won the games they need to win to be in the position. Sweeping the Ravens is a big deal, and now with a pretty commanding lead, their red zone defense is best in the league, still under 60%, I believe. So it's right at the top. Not an invaluable team. The card of Roethlisberger is above average. The running backs are average, but there's enough there to create the run pass dynamic to create offense, and there's certainly good wide receivers on the squad,
especially with that defense too. So what about the Ravens then? What do you think about when you're looking at their odds and their position right now?
Ravens are in an interesting spot. You got to project them out to be right on the fringe of the playoffs. The schedule gets easier for these Ravens going forward. They're sitting at, just checking the notes here, 28th strongest. So among the weakest schedules out there left to play, will put them in a pretty good position. And as you have noted there, a very key win against Tennessee that could easily yield them a playoff spot. So Baltimore, sitting in third place, not where they want to be, looking up on some things, but if you're got a good shot.
If you're Baltimore, you're looking for. I was just noticing you're looking for the Chiefs and Patriots to win those respective divisions. Because you've lost those games head to head to the Chiefs and Patriots. You'd rather not see them in a wild card race because that's probably where you're shooting for. So we'll see what the Ravens can do. They're the most penalized team in the league, tied with the Chiefs, as a matter of fact, on that. But they've got, for all their run offense, and they do have a good run offense, they're one of only 2 teams this year that doesn't have a 500-yard rusher. They've got 3 guys that are just under 500 with Lamar Jackson and the 2 running backs. So, but 6-5, we'll see. Obviously, it's going to be a hunt for a wild card spot for them, I think, at this point, most likely. What about the Bengals? 4-7. Obviously, you're going to have to run the table if you're looking for the shot at a playoff spot. But I think they're in good shape. Just need one more win to be a Coach of the Year team in that tournament after the fact. Bengals, they've struggled this year, obviously, a little bit more. They've led the league in fumbles as far as fumbles lost offensively. So it's always tough to overcome that. What are you looking at with the Bengals here, Anthony?
Yeah, as we touched on a little bit in the COI, the healthy Burrow would make a big difference going into Coach of the Year.
Sure would.
For Jeff, and that's the entire offense rotates around him being on the field. Joe Mixon's card is not anywhere close to what last year's was or what next year's will be.
Yeah, next year's going to be good.
Yeah, Bernard is the main ball carrier, and he's among the weakest number 1 backs out there. So He's facing a ton of pass calls on offense. Burrow's good enough to overcome them, but if in many cases and be able to move the ball, but if Burrow's not in the field, then this team, like we saw in the Pittsburgh game versus Cincinnati, where they did not have Burrow, they just didn't have anything to offer on offense. It's just not
Right.
for them to win. And in those couple games where Burrow was out, I mean that's enough to unravel the playoff chances for Cincy,
I agree.
as well as they've been playing. But Coach of Year, this is a real Coach of Year champion contender. With Burrow there, as weak as the defense might be in some respects, Burrow and those receivers can move the ball if everybody's on the field.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. Let's take a look at the AFC South. So here we've got maybe 3 teams that could still win the division. Let's start with the Colts. They're 7-4, 1 game up. And they've beat the Titans twice. And so that head-to-head sweep gives them an early advantage, obviously, there. For their defense, it's kind of surprising. The red zone defense for the Colts is the league worst, 89% scoring allowed in the red zone for the Colts. And yet they're 4th in scoring defense. They only allow 19.3 points a game. So I kind of looked into it, and sure enough, the Colts have allowed the least trips into their red zone. So translation, Colts are really tough defensively until you get to the red zone. And as long as you can get to that red zone, they're going to let you walk right in. At least that's what the stats say. But they're going to be a tough out, obviously. They're a very balanced team. What do you think, Anthony?
They're a balanced team. It's one of Rivers' better cards. I don't have
Right.
that card memorized like others, but as I've glanced at it throughout the season, I've always been sort of pleasantly surprised at what I see there. And that brings them balance on offense and the ability to move the ball with Taylor.
Yeah.
We got a nice short yardage back in Nyheim Hines, who's just doesn't have a spectacular card, but he can get you a yard or two when you need it. Then you have one of the better run defenses, probably the second best run defense out there, which sort of is more reason for surprise on the red zone defense performance. But good running, the ability to change up and throw passes and complete them with Rivers and Hilton, etc., gives Indy the chance to be a real contender and to make a far run here in the playoffs. I think they're right in the top group when it's all said and done. And I think you primarily, a lot of things are a given. The surprise is that Rivers card, and that Rivers card can actually
Love that card. Balance. He can hit you on all 3 levels is one of the things that Rivers card is good at, if I recall. So what about the Titans when you're looking at them?
Well, the Titans' 2 losses to Indianapolis.
It's tough.
So basically what the situation you're in if you're Tennessee is, all right, do those 2 losses to Indianapolis define your season, or do you find a way to write a different script, right, to make a way into probably what's going to be a wild card and make a run? The team is obviously good enough overall. They can make a few arguments here and there, but probably the best offensive battery at quarterback and halfback. So you have that, and you add in A.J. Brown on top of it all, who I still think, if I'm not mistaken, leads the league in receiving yards. Extremely dangerous team. They're going to catch Indy? Probably not. Tennessee has the 11th most difficult schedule versus Indy's 28th. Indy has a pretty
it's a very light schedule for Indy. I was noticing that as well.
So for Tennessee, it's about a few key games that are coming up, right? It's this Browns game this week, absolutely massive.
Yes.
The Lions game, interconference, but they're 2 teams that are in the midst of the wild card hunt. And then a big game against the Packers, which with this offensive battery, it's winnable. And you just guessed wrong onto your halfback's card, onto Henry's card a few times, and you can turn any game around. So
you mentioned Henry, and he's going to be. Listen, he's going to be the one. They were winning more games early in the season as he was pounding out 200 yards rushing, and it seems like the rush yards have kind of tapered off a little bit as his numbers have come down a little bit. So I kind of think that really it's going to kind of come down to Derrick Henry. But I don't know. I sort of think that The Titans still have a shot to win the division, even though they lost both games to the Colts, because it's only 2 games they need to gain over a 5-game stretch. The Colts schedule obviously works against them, but you never know. What about the Texans? How you like their chances?
Texans have been a little bit of a slide.
Yeah.
The ability to get into COY, they're already in, is that right? Or they're close to it?
Yeah, I believe they are. I'll double check that here. The Texans they need one more win to qualify, Anthony.
Yeah. So Texans would be classified as another dangerous COY team. Good coach, good, excellent quarterback card. So definitely one of those COY contenders going forward. Making the playoffs going to be a pretty tough run. They have to face the Colts twice. And
that's
they
the
face
key.
the Colts in 13, 14, 15. You might want to face the Colts in 17 if the Colts don't have anything to play for. Well, that doesn't fall that way. They got to face them 2 times in the next 3 weeks. Outside of that, they got one with the Titans. Titans likely are playing for all the marbles in 17. So the ability to get in or not, they're likely going to need that win. So the Bengals game is a really interesting COY preview game out in 16 to keep your eye on. I think they could easily see each other in COY. And they're going to have to beat the Bears. As far as I'm concerned, the Texans have a better set of cards, more ways to move the ball than the Bears do. The Bears are drastically undercarded.
Yeah.
So they have to come up with a win there. That should be your win to get into COY. See what you can do against the Colts. Unlikely to make the playoffs, but likely will make noise in the COY.
Yeah, I don't think they could make the wild card really, but they still have a puncher's chance at the division. They're only 2 games back, and it's easy to see third place and lose sight of the fact that this team controls its own destiny. It has 2 games against the team that's 2 ahead of them and 1 game against the team that's 1 ahead of them. And you win those 3 division games, they're probably the division champs, because the Titans outside of division games have the Packers, the Colts have the Steelers. So the Texans are still in it. I don't see them really as a wild card. If they win enough to be competitive there, they might take this division. So we'll see. As far as the Jaguars, 2-9, I always feel bad for this team. They're struggling. I was kind of excited to see Coach Nathan Wheeler celebrate when he qualified for Coach of the Year, and he is officially going to be in that tournament. So I'm excited for him there. But it's been a little bit of a struggle. Obviously, at 2-9, their offensive line has not performed well. They've given up a league worst 29 sacks, and they've also their third down offense is usually by average still 8.5 yards away from a first down. So they're only gaining 1.5 yards by average on the first 2 downs. So tough way to make your living. So what are you seeing with the Jaguars, Anthony?
Well, I mean, they're in COY, so looking ahead to that. And we talk about Houston being a potential contender for COY. Well, Jacksonville beat them in the regular season, and then they lost the second one. Jacksonville lost that game to Houston, that second one, by 2 points. So if you're going to say Houston and Cincy are in the mix for COY contention, the results tell you Jacksonville's right there too. And how are they there? Well, they actually have, among those 3 teams that are likely to be in the COY, Jacksonville's already going to be there. They have the best running backs in the group. So with Robinson in the backfield and Minshew at quarterback, Minshew might be the 3rd best quarterback, but he's no slouch. He starts in draft leagues, low INTs, good short pass. This team may look like, cellar dwellers, et cetera, et cetera. No, this team is going to be playing into the postseason, and we'll have a chance.
You can win with them.
COY glory, yep.
Yep. All right. So let's move on to the AFC West, a familiar division for you and I. As a matter of fact, we are tied for first place, the Chiefs and Chargers at 7-4. And so let's kind of break that down a little bit here. Obviously, one of the keys there is do have the head-to-head victory against you earlier in the season, a 34-31 overtime victory. But it's been kind of a struggle. As you know, I've been very lucky to win some of the games I have. Chiefs have had a good special team, so there have been 9 kick return touchdowns in the league this year total, and 4 of them have been by Byron Pringle of the Chiefs. So that's been pretty awesome. Chiefs do lead the league in penalties, tied with the Ravens on that. So that's, of course, a downside there. But a decent position, already having one win against the Chargers. So what do you see when you see my team there, Anthony?
Well, your team, we've talked a lot about the Chiefs and what they have versus the division. When you break down the division, the Chiefs, Chargers, and Raiders, very similar teams with a number of different sort of differentiators lingering throughout the cards, but very much the same. The major differentiator that gives the Chiefs the edge is the special teams, as you mentioned. That in every facet of special teams, the Chiefs are better than the Chargers. Not just a little bit, but a lot better than the Chargers, and that made a difference in our game. It'll make in our first meeting, and it'll make a difference down the line. When you break down, you know, what's going on with the Chiefs? Well, lowest amount of running attempts in the league, lowest run percentage as a percentage of plays. So a lot of passing going on with the offense, but look at the cards. That's to be expected. Looking at the race, these next 2 weeks are particularly important for this divisional race between the Chiefs and the Chargers. The Chargers have so far had the easiest schedule in the league through 12 weeks. Going forward, the seventh toughest. A lot of the seventh toughest schedule for the Chargers is locked into these next 2 weeks. Once the Chargers get through these next 2 weeks, if you look at strength of schedule from 15 out, it goes all the way down to like 19 or 20. So these games against the Patriots and the Falcons are absolutely critical. If the Chargers can find a way to stay tied with the Chiefs through 13 and 14, then the script kind of flips. And all of a sudden, the Chiefs, who have to face the Saints and the Falcons in 15 and 16, have the uphill climb. So we sort of break it down into 2-week seasons here between the Chiefs and the Chargers before we meet each other in Week 17. And the interesting thing about Week 17 as well is that if we beat up each other, we have enough losses, then the lowest division winner and the highest wild card face each other again in the wild card.
Oh yeah, it's possible.
So we could be facing a sort of a Week 17 match and then a Week 18 match.
Wouldn't be the first time I'd faced a division opponent in round one, so that happens. I look at your Chargers, and I just have to point out and toot your horn. You look at a 7-4 team, it's easy to lose sight of the fact you started 0-4. The Chargers started 0-4. They, other than the undefeated Seahawks, this is the hottest team in the league. Justin Herbert leads the league with 28 touchdown passes. He's tied with Tom Brady. Also, the Chargers are the most aggressive team in the league on fourth downs. You've gone for it 32 times. That's most in the league. And it's working well for you because your 66% conversion rate is third best in the league on fourth down. So a high number of attempts to keep drives going and a high success rate when you do it. And I can tell you from the game we played already this year, I remember being a little bit blindsided by, wow, he's just going for this a lot. So, so I got used to that pretty quick. But obviously, I agree with your assessment on the remaining schedule, and it's probably going to come down to that final week. So, all right. So looking at the other two teams, Broncos 4-7, Raiders 4-7. They're both 3 games behind. So you're both looking like you're going to have to run the table to even have a shot at anything, but they accept the coach of the year. And I think both of them are in pretty good shape. Let's take a look before we look at them. So the Broncos and Raiders, I guess the Broncos need 2 more wins. And the Raiders, unfortunately, it looks like it would have to run the table. I forgot they did win 8 games last year. So the Raiders need to run the table to make the COY, but the Broncos need just 2 wins. So Broncos have a shot at that. We'll see. They do have the second worst rate converting on third downs on offense, just 1 out of every 3, 33%. And Broncos are also the most injured team in the league this year, 21 games lost to injury. What are you looking at with the Broncos?
The Broncos have they're the outlier in the AFC West. They're not structured like the other 3 teams. They have defense and more running. And when they lose Melvin Gordon, which they've lost on occasion, or Lindsey, then they sort of don't have the carries. If they only have one of those guys on the field for any given game, they don't have the carries to be able to run it down the defensive team's throats efficiently to start to garner guest run calls from the defense. And with that quarterback, you need guest run. You need guest run. You need wrong passing
Yeah.
attacks to be able to be productive and avoid INTs. So that's really the key. The defense is good enough, but can you get enough production out of those halfbacks to be able to put a couple wins together? I think so. I haven't done the analysis of the overuse to know for sure on Denver's side how they're positioned, but that is the key. That is the key to victory. Locke has been playing well better, and I assume it's attributable to exactly that, getting more guess wrong passing. Keep that up, then the COI is certainly within range.
Sure. The Raiders have the easiest remaining schedule in the league. So if you want to dream a little of running the table and making the Coach of the Year tournament, the easiest schedule left in the league is a good place to start. The Raiders will be without Josh Jacobs and his 273 carded carries this coming week against the Jets. So that's going to put them a little bit behind the eight ball. But they should be okay. Their offense leads the league with 51% conversions on third downs. So they're doing pretty good. In fact, the top 7 third down conversion teams on offense, the Raiders are the only team with a losing record. They for some reason, just that's their anomaly, I guess. But what are you looking at when you see the Raiders?
Raiders have just had a hard time getting people to respect the run game, which is a little bit of a mystery to me, knowing how good Jacobs' card is. And sure, he's out in this coming game against the Jets, but so it'll be even more difficult. This team has had zero long pass guessed wrong situations this year
For the whole season?
for the entire season.
Wow.
In just 11 guessed wrong short passes, which is 29th in the league. So that there's something going on there. Not sure what it is. I respect Josh Jacobs. Look at that card. I wish it was mine.
Yeah.
I'd take him over Eckler. That's for sure. But they're having trouble breaking out of that sort of dynamic of people guessing pass effectively against Derek Carr.
That's always fun trying to break down. You find a stat that sticks out, and then you're trying to figure out, well, why is that happening? It's always fun to kind of look at those. So, all right. So let's go ahead and shift to the other conference. The NFC. We'll start in the NFC East, where the New York Giants are leading by 3 games. So you're likely a division winner. They have Seattle Seahawks on the schedule this week, but I'm going to tell you not to count them out of this game. They've been Giant slayers before. These Giants have. They scored 34 points against the Steelers, a team that nobody scores 34 points against this year. And they won that game. And then they also beat the Rams 18-14. So don't count them out against the Seahawks here this week. And I certainly expect they'll probably walk away with the division with that kind of a lead right now. Anthony, what do you think?
The Giants with the big lead are likely to close out the division at this point. Just a very big lead for the teams with the cards that are behind them to make up. They have to put together some streaks that are possible. Of course, anything's possible at this point, sitting with heading into week 13. But those cards don't suggest 5-game winning streaks.
Sure.
Among those below them. Yeah, heading into this game against Seattle, hey, the Giants beat Seattle last year in Seattle. I'm sure Scott remembers it. I'm sure Dennis remembers it. That was a fantastic defensive game by the Giants. And as a matter of fact, Daniel Jones didn't play. He was injured. The backup quarterback won the Giants that game in Seattle. It was a big win. Gave the Giants a lot of confidence for a playoff push that ultimately failed. So don't count them out. Strat has a way of making in real life results sort of come at least close to reality. So there's a chance here.
Yes.
And on top of that, Scott already has them playing amazingly. So you sort of combine those two together. The defense does call pass a lot. And the Seahawks like to set up pass with the run. They're 29th in guessing right with run at 15%. So might need a few more guest run calls to get through Seattle. But overall, this team is likely headed to the playoffs. They'll have nothing to lose going in. You might have some NFC contenders saying, "Oh, geez, let's see if I can get the matchup with the Giants," because they're going to obviously a weaker card set than the Packers or Seahawks or the other the behemoths in the conference. But the Giants will be hungry and they'll have nothing to lose, and they'll be a really interesting and very difficult out in the
I
playoffs.
agree. I agree. They're the team that everybody would choose to play, but nobody's going to have a confidence level of 10 in that matchup. So let's look at the remaining teams here in this division. We'll start with the Redskins. They do have the 4-1 division record. They've got the season sweep, as a matter of fact, against those same New York Giants we just talked about. So they would win the tiebreak if they could gain 3 games on them. But they also have the Seahawks on the schedule, just like the Giants. But they also have the Steelers on the schedule. I don't really see it happening. So I think, a lot of things would have to go right for them. That one thing that's gone right is their kicker, Dustin Hopkins, has just missed one kick all year. 19 of 20 from field goals and perfect on the extra points. So that's been working for him. But I don't know that I would see them doing that. And I'll look at the Coach of the Year opportunity for them while you go ahead and talk to me about what you see with the Redskins.
Yeah, Harlan brought up an interesting stat for this team that going into last week, they had swept the division. They're 4-0. They suffered their first loss to the Cowboys in week 12. So now 4-1. And yeah, that does give them a puncher's chance of climbing back into it, having those 2 wins against the Giants, as you mentioned, and that strong division record. But they have a real tough schedule coming up. 4th toughest in the league. 3 games out. It's a difficult pathway for the football team.
I don't think they're necessarily carded to do that too. So, what about the Eagles? What do you like about the Eagles right now?
Well, the Eagles are an even more challenging spot than Washington for the division. Everyone's really fighting for the division here, and I believe the Eagles have had a very difficult. Yeah, they've had the second most difficult schedule to date. That's put them in this position. It doesn't get any easier this week versus the Packers, and then the Saints, and finally it eases up a bit with the Cardinals. But the Cardinals are dangerous. 2 wins or not, they hung with the Patriots. The cards are there. The cards are pretty good for the Cardinals to be able to hang with the Eagles. So the Eagles also have a fairly tough road, but COI is in store, right? And within reach, is that right?
Yeah, so the Eagles are even right now. They've already matched the record from real life, so they just need one more win down the stretch, and they would be a Coach of the Year participant. So, and this it's a team that I don't see them making the playoffs. I think they've got kind of like you said, kind of a tough schedule. I call the Eagles the ground control team because they've been real good up front. 5th in rushing yards offensively, 6th in rush yards allowed defensively. So they've kind of been controlling the line of scrimmage. But I think it's sometimes tough to overcome, a quarterback that's kind of challenged like Carson Wentz is. We've seen that on some of the games I've broadcast and talked about that with head coach Bruce Mogg. So I understand that's difficult, but he's a good coach and he's going to be in that Coach of the Year tournament even if he doesn't make it, and he'll be a tough out. So what about the Cowboys, Anthony?
Well, Cowboys obviously got off to a real slow start and have just been trying to dig out ever since. Got a nice win last week versus Washington, and they're dangerous because of the strength of the offense. The relative strength of the offense versus the rest of the NFC East is very much in their favor. But Harlan brought up a good point last week that he doesn't expect to be able to have Prescott in all the games going forward. And if you're going to make a run, you're going to want Prescott. He also noted that Dalton has done better than Prescott to date, but the cards tell a different story. That's likely not to continue, and all things being equal, you want Prescott under center and not Andy Dalton. It looks like Andy Dalton's going to have to face 2 or 3 of these opponents, and that's going to put the Cowboys in a pretty tough spot.
Yeah, I think so too. The one thing I would say is that I think that they've got probably of the 3 teams at 4-7, they probably have the easiest remaining schedule of that group. Cowboys' defensive red zone efficiencies 3rd worst in the league, 82%. So they're giving up a ton of points in the red zone. I think it'd be a tough hoe for them to get back into the race, but they are possibly good for Coach of the Year. I think they were at -2, so they would need 3 wins, and I think that's doable for them. So we'll kind of have to see where that leads to. But let's go ahead and move now to the NFC North, and here's some breaking news for you. The Green Bay Packers have become the first team to clinch their division at 10-1. This is by virtue of, believe it or not, the potential common games tiebreaker with the Detroit Lions. If Green Bay wins or loses out, and the Lions win their last 5, both teams end up with 10 wins. Both teams end up with a 4-2 division record, and so it would go to the third tiebreak, which is common games. And that's where the Packers having wins over teams like the Falcons and 49ers, or Saints and Falcons. There you go, Saints and Falcons. Give them an advantage over the Lions, and that's why that division's already clinched. So you will see the Packers in the playoffs this year. And so the one thing they're going to have trouble with down the stretch is they do have one injury if they're going to try to fight for that top seed with the Seahawks. They're going to do it without wide receiver Alan Lazard. It's a team that runs a base 2 tight end offense, so they only have 4 wide receivers carded, so now just 3 down the stretch. So that's going to limit some of their, spread formation opportunities, but they'll be certainly a playoff team and ready to go when that time comes. What do you think about the Packers there?
The Packers are right at the top of the league,
right,
and have a great shot at winning it all. And the difference from this team versus a few others of the past is the balance. They have the ability to run the ball. They run the ball 39% of the time, which is probably the high for quite a few years for this squad. And they have the cards to do it. And as a result, they're getting defenses to respect the run. That opens things up for one of the best QB cards out there, Aaron Rodgers. The Packers have had 52 short pass guessed wrong opportunities, good for 3rd in the league. You wouldn't assume walking into the season that defenses would respect the run enough to create that opportunity on that amazing card.
That's right.
Rodgers short pass wrong, but they've achieved that balance, and if that continues, it's a very, very difficult offense to stop, and the defense can do the job. There are better defenses out there, but the defense is strong enough to carry them to win, especially when you have that balance of an offense and cards that are that good among the quarterback and the running backs.
Yeah. All right, so let's look at the lines. They're 5-6, so they're hunting only for a wild card, obviously, at this point. On their 3rd down defense, they are averaging 6.5 yards to go for a 1st down. That is the lowest such total in the league. So the Lions are behind the 8 ball 3rd down defensively, and that's why they also have the worst conversion rate, 52% conversions on 3rd down. They're going to be a long shot for a wild card. They do have the Packers and Bucks and Titans on the schedule. So I think this is a team that we can probably expect to see more as a Coach of the Year participant. As you can see here, they've already qualified, and they'll be a tough out in that tournament when the time comes. What do you think? Same thing?
No, they have a pretty good pathway to a playoff spot.
Really? Okay. Tell me.
Well, you take a look at the schedule, and that game with the Buccaneers in Week 16 could essentially be a de facto playoff game right there. This team was we identified early on in our preview broadcast as one that was well suited to rack up wins beyond the IRL based on the offensive cards.
And they have already, yeah.
Yeah, and the defense is like many others, subpar. But the offense is strong enough. That Stafford card is strong enough to carry this team at 5-6. We'll get into sort of playoffs later. Sure, obviously the division is off the table, but at 5-6, they're very much in play here. Of course, they got to take care of business and beat the Bears. They have a chance to surprise the Packers. They have a good chance against the Titans too. Maybe not coin flip chance, but pretty close. And then the Bucks, and then a better than coin flip chance against the Vikings.
Yeah.
As you see the way the schedule rolls out and who the Buccaneers are facing and the difficult NFC South and everything that goes on there, while the Buccaneers are playing the Falcons and the Saints, this team is going to face the Bears and the Vikings, and they have a pathway to the playoffs.
So let's look at the Bears then. So as far as coach of the year, they have 4 wins. And wow, yeah, the Bears, I forgot, they had 8 wins in real life. So he would have to run the table. Mike Martin would have to run the table to get his Bears into the Coach of the Year tournament. And probably would have to do the same if he's going to, have any shot at the playoffs. So, it's kind of a difficult season, but it's not the best carded team, I guess I would say. And so there is that. The defense has allowed a league best low of just 8 rushing touchdowns on the year. But I think that it would have to be running the table. And even though the schedule is not that tough, I think that's asking a lot for a team that doesn't have any offensive playmakers. What do you think?
Yeah, Mike got the short end of the stick this year. I think as much as
agree.
any other, maybe the Jets, yeah, the Bears, just especially with the 8 wins in real life,
Yeah.
dramatically undercarded. Trubisky is barely he's serviceable. If you take the bottom third quarterbacks, he's at the top of that. You don't get a prize for being at the best of the bottom third. And then you have Montgomery, who's also a capable running back in the way that Trubisky is a capable quarterback, but Trubisky is just not good enough to generate consistent pass calls from the D. And Montgomery's been slowed down. And then on the other side, the Bears walk into the 2020 season with a reputation for defense. Hicks gets hurt, injuries throughout the defense, and you add it all up, those defensive cards, those 3 defensive cards for Chicago, just don't have any punch to it. So mediocre offense at best, really honestly subpar, and a below average defense does not really give you a pathway to go to 500. So Mike was put in a pretty bad spot this year.
Hopefully he gets a little Justin Fields excitement here in the coming years. I'd be happy to see that for him. So what about the Vikings?
So the Vikings, I sort of view them as a junior team of the Titans. Just in every one of those positions where they're sort of parallel, they sort of have Cousins and
I like it.
Yeah, it's a great halfback running back combo, just not as good as Tennessee. Fun team to play, but just simply doesn't have the same power as Tennessee does. Not Cousins isn't as good as Tannehill, just isn't. And Henry is by far the best card in the set. So 3-8, probably was hoping for better than that. Team probably has a bit more potential than that. But if I had my druthers, I'd rather be coaching the Vikings than the Bears, because at least you get to have fun.
They're more fun for sure. Yeah.
With an amazing halfback card to play with. And the Vikings could easily be in a position to spoil some things for the Buccaneers.
They can spoil anybody, sure.
They can spoil things for the Saints in 16. They can certainly spoil things for the Lions in 17. So the Vikings have some interesting spoiler spots with that offense that they can muster. Some guest wrong calls on their own card. They can put up points and some more wins before the season's out.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. The Vikings. We just talked about how they have all these, playmakers and Dalvin Cook and a good quarterback and Thielen and some good receivers, and but it surprises me to find out that the Vikings have lost the time of possession battle this year against their opponents more than any other team. They have a 68-minute differential in the negative in time of possession. More than a whole game, and that's also 25 minutes worse than any other team in the league. So a little bit surprising, but they're struggling to win that time of possession and control the game. So that's led to a tough year, and I think I was looking at Coach of the Year, and they would have to run the table, unfortunately. So I think that's probably going to be a tough road for him, but the hill, like we talked about with some of the Bears and some of the others, he's got better things waiting for him next year. I think the Vikings are going to be a much better team next year. I really like their offense. So. All right, so let's look at the NFC South. This is one of my favorite divisions to look at right now. I really like the way this race is shaping up with the defending Super Bowl champs sitting in third place, a game and a half behind a couple of tough teams. So let's go ahead and look at that from the top down. Let's start with the Saints. What are you looking at there, Anthony?
Well, the Saints, we came in very impressed with the Saints card set and the Buccaneers card set. And they sort of run into this problem where they play each other a lot. And they also play what is a very strongly carded Falcons team. The Falcons team has the best running back they've had in years. There was a Freeman-Coleman duo that was pretty good a few years ago. When Michael Turner was running for all sorts of yards, his cards actually weren't that good. So you've got three very good teams at the top here, sort of have the ability to beat up on each other in some pretty difficult schedules. Now New Orleans sits at the top, and they go into this huge game this week that's going against the Falcons.
Yeah, big game.
So, yeah, it's going to really define things. With the win for the Saints here, they'll have 2 up on the Falcons. They'll have 2 up on the Bucs. So if they can find a way to win. No guarantees there that they're going to find a way to win, but if they can, they certainly have an opportunity to get a decisive edge in what looks like a bunched up division. So we'll find out a lot more about this race after that Saints Falcons game. The Falcons, if they can pull off a win, well, they actually have a pretty tough schedule after that. Third toughest in the league the rest of the way. Go to LA to play the Chargers, then back against the Bucs, and then the Chiefs, and then the Bucs again. So that's not necessarily in a good spot. Even if they do win this game against the Saints, it's sort of the beginning of the work that they need to get done to come out of this division as the winner. I'll say this much: if the Falcons win this division, they've earned it.
Oh yeah,
they've really earned it. It's just an onslaught coming up. The Bucs.
Well.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The Bucs sitting at 6-6 now, with two teams above them, and then into the bye this week. Sort of need to see how the game of the two guys above them goes. They're going to find themselves 2 out, obviously, by the time this week is done. No matter what happens there, unless there's a tie, and then after that, have some pretty key games. 2 against the Falcons. And that game against the Lions in Week 16 could easily decide their playoff fate.
Yeah,
all the cards are there. Ton of injuries.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great
the injuries. I mentioned it in the game summaries that the Vita Vea injury, in my view, cost Tampa the game against the Rams, even though Brady played horribly and much worse than his cards would indicate. But of course, Vita Vea was actually out in real life for 2/3 of the season last year, so it kind of was a dose of reality in some ways. But the Bucs have had a lot of other injuries too. So they're here at 6-6. They still have a pathway in. It's not too late if they can get in. They're one of the best carded teams in the set and can do a lot of damage in the playoffs if they can make it. But I think they're sitting at around a 50% chance to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm with you on most of it. Most of what you said there. The Falcons, boy, they sure are an anomaly this year. John posted some information about how his running back's doing. Gurley's doing so much better than expected, and they're certainly not carded to be necessarily competing at this level. In fact, I may be wrong. I want to say, did they only have like 5 wins? 4 wins in real life last year. He's a triple qualifier for
Yeah.
the COY, but he's playing in a way that I don't expect we're going to see him there. The Falcons, when you're undercarded and overperforming, it means you're probably doing a lot of the little things to get it done. So the Falcons I have down as my down and distance champions. All right, no one gets more yards offensively on first downs than the Falcons, 2.6 yards per clip. So they go into second down in better shape offensively than any other team in the league. They're also the best team in the league getting favorable down and distance on third downs, averaging 6.2 yards only to get that first down. Defensively, the Falcons are allowing just 30% conversions on fourth down attempts. Teams are just 6 for 20 against them on fourth down. So that's 14 possessions they've taken over. That's best in the league. So they've done a lot of the little things that allow you to get to this position. But man, I'm looking at that schedule, Anthony. Saints 7-4, Chargers 7-4, and then you've got 3 straight games against the 2 Super Bowl teams from last year, and I know the Buccaneers are 6-6, but that's a Super Bowl winning team that's carded appropriately, and I know that the Falcons don't look at their schedule and say, look at the Buccaneers twice down the stretch and go, oh, thank heavens I've got a 6-6 team. It's just it's as tough a schedule as I think you can find. So I think that's going to make it kind of tough for them. The Bucks, they do have that bye coming up. Help them get healthy. We'll just kind of have to see their odds going down the stretch. They are one of only 2 teams in the league that hasn't lost a fumble all season. And so that's working in their favor. The Saints, actually, by comparison, the Saints have lost 10 fumbles on offense, which is second worst in the league. And the Saints are the only team in the league that has not recovered a fumble all season long. So they're upside down by 10 just in the fumbles category. So they've overcome a lot. So I think the Saints have kind of underperformed for where they're carded. The Falcons just the opposite. And like I say, the Bucks are right there. So it's going to be an interesting blitz for sure. What about the Panthers, Anthony? What are you seeing with this team?
Well, Panthers have a shot COY, right? A couple games out. Can they put a couple wins together here? By this week, Browns, hungry, tough team to face for them. Panthers don't necessarily have a very good. Is that Broncos? Sorry, Broncos. Very similar, facing a running team, not necessarily suiting the Panthers well. Then to the Pack, and then Washington, winnable, but close one. That was close in real life, as I recall. And the Saints in 17. If 2 wins are needed, and I think that's right. 2, is it 2 or 1 away?
They are 2, I believe. We're going to find out right now. Panthers, yes, they need 2 to get to the green and be in the tournament.
So to find 2 wins there is not a given. You circle the Broncos and Washington as the opportunities, and
right.
you would think 1 out of 2 is possible there, and you think it's unlikely to win versus the Packers or the Saints. So you might need to steal 1.
And he's been close in a lot of his losses too, I've noticed.
Yep. They're throwing the ball a lot. They don't have much on the run side. So we talked about in the broadcast the amount of pass attempts. Bridgewater now leading the league in pass attempts.
Yep.
And they're facing a lot of guess pass. As a result, makes it difficult. Thankfully, Bridgewater's INTs aren't that bad, so that's giving them puncher's chance.
It's a team in desperate need of McCaffrey to be healthy.
Yep, no doubt.
So, but yeah, they'll probably be in the coach of the year. I think they can get a couple wins down the stretch here. We'll see. Panthers are one of only 2 teams that's not lost a fumble all season. It's funny, the Bucks and Panthers are the 2 teams that have not lost a fumble yet this season. But they are the 2 teams that have played the most games. They've both the teams that have already played 12 games. So we'll see how that shakes out there. Let's go to our final division, which is the NFC West, and our second postseason clinch announcement. The Seattle Seahawks, although they have not clinched the division title, they have clinched a playoff berth at 11-0. They're even if they lose to go to 11-5 and don't win the division, there aren't enough teams to kick them out of that wild card spot. So the Seahawks will be in the playoffs again. It's also worth noting, if you're looking at the Seahawks as a question of whether they're going to go undefeated, of course, you're going to look at their schedule: Giants, Jets, Redskins. So that seems like kind of doable. The Rams being a really tough game, obviously. But it's worth mentioning, as I said, Dennis Crowley, coach of the Seahawks, has already had an undefeated season. He was 19-0 with these same Seahawks back in the USFFL 2005 season. He's also the coach with 4 Super Bowl trophies in his case too, so he knows what he's doing. So, what are you seeing when you see the Seahawks here?
Well, the Seahawks, they're not the best carded team in the NFC.
I agree.
It's not. It's a poor pass defense. So with 2 4s at the corners, 4 free safety. So I've spent some time facing Dennis in the past. Did a deep dive last year, facing him in a final in a draft league
against Dennis.
Yeah, against Dennis, and just looking for patterns in how he calls defense on first and second down in that league, and there was nothing there. There was no correlations. There was nothing there at all to suggest patterns in his calls, which tells you that he truly coaches against the opponent in the moment and the cards in the moment, which is exactly the way that you need to play this game. And it does show up. Just a quick analysis of Seattle shows you that they've just dominated the coach, especially offensively versus the defense. They've had, in terms of guessed right passing, they are guessed right the least out of any team in the league at 61%. That is an unheard of number. Typically, you're up around 80, high 70s, maybe into the low 80s. 61 is just off the charts. And he's doing it by calling more off tackles than anybody else. Number 1 off tackle runner in the league is Seattle, and that sets up just incredible opportunities for guess wrong. 70 short pass guess wrong opportunities, second in the league. 14 guess wrong long pass opportunities, fifth best in the league. So just outfoxing the opponents.
That's the right word for it.
And that's over 12 games and over all the seasons that we've faced Dennis. That's not an aberration. It's not something going on.
That's right.
In a short span, these are numbers that are beyond that. There's just better coaching going on there. So that's how it's happening. It's the best way to win, and it's part of the reason why Stratomatic football is the best Stratomatic product in my opinion. Baseball, other sports, basketball, hockey, all of them none of them give the coach the ability to influence the outcome like our game does here. And Dennis has really been taking advantage of it, and they're undefeated, and they'll go a long way in the playoffs as a result. I see no reason why this trend wouldn't continue.
Yeah, we'll have to see about the undefeated season, but I think that the schedule says he's certainly got a shot. What about the Rams?
Well, the Rams are obviously a very strong team, well carded. Scott was talking about some sort of weak running cards. Yeah, they're not the best running cards, but they're
serviceable.
They're certainly sufficient.
Yeah.
And Goff is sufficient, and then everything around them is very strong. So it's a well structured team that is positioned to probably not win the division, but probably get in the top wild card, and then we'll be in the ring with Green Bay and Seattle punching it out in what's going to be an excellent NFC playoff tournament.
Yep. Rams are the red zone champions of the USFFL. They have an amazing 23% advantage over their opponents in the red zone. And so let me break that down for you. The Rams are first in red zone efficiency on offense, 86% of possible points they put in the bank. Red zone defensively, they're third in the league with 63% points possible scored. So it's a 20 what is that, a 26, what did I say, a 23% advantage over their opponents. So you're going to win a lot of games if you're dominating at that level in the red zone, thus the 9-2 record. The odds of them taking the division, I think, are kind of slim, being 2 behind. Dennis, the savant of the way he's calling and coaching his games, but the Rams are definitely going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be dangerous for sure. So I'm with you there. San Francisco 49ers 5-6. They're fringe. They obviously can't win the division, but they could get in as a wild card. They might have to run the table to make it happen, and that could be tough when they have both the Seahawks and Bills on the schedule. But you never know. The Seahawks is Week 17. Maybe you get down to that final game, and the Seahawks aren't 15-0. They're not looking to get the undefeated season, but they've already clinched the 1 seed. Maybe they rest some players. So who knows? Maybe San Francisco can get themselves in the playoffs. They'll have to improve on their turnover ratio if they want to do that. They're the worst in the USFFL with a -11 turnover ratio. What do you think about the 49ers?
San Fran is just one of those teams I've not seen very much this year.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. I know
they play a lot of games during the day when you and I generally aren't watching. I think it's some of that.
I know Mostert's good. I know Jeff Wilson's good. I know CJ Beathard is pretty decent. Just looking at his card now, I knew it was good going in because it was ranked. Strat had him ranked like 17th, 18th, or 19th in the set for quarterbacks, according to their rankings. And the issue with him is 104 attempts. So how much he has left in his tank on 150% overuse is actually a pretty big deal. It's a pretty strong card. Weird interceptions all over it, but ultimately kind of low at a 1% interception percentage. San Fran is a dark horse. They're a dark horse. The pass defense is good. Good running game. If Beathard is in at quarterback, then this team is as good as many of the playoff teams that are out there. So I would say the jury's out here, and at least in my mind, because I haven't seen them and haven't really broken down where they are in terms of Beathard's attempts. But the ingredients are there for a run. It would be nice if they had one more win. That's for sure.
Yeah, sure.
Schedule Bills. That's a winnable game, but not an easy one. Obviously, it's a playoff caliber team. Washington, a winnable game. Cowboys, a winnable game. The Cardinals. Talk about the Cardinals a lot. We'll talk about it more in just a second. Not as winnable as it may seem. And then, of course, you have the Seahawks, as you already mentioned. So, the 49ers are in the mix. They're in the mix.
So let's close it out with the Cardinals. 0-3 division record. Obviously been kind of a rough start for them. Cardinals, interesting. I looked it up. They only have 2 sacks defensively all season. Just 2. So that's obviously worse than the league. And what's even more interesting is that offensively, their line has only allowed 4 sacks all year. So there's only been 6 sacks total for both teams in all of their games this year. So you would sort of think that with all of this ability for quarterbacks to just stand tall and proud in the pocket, there'd be a lot of passing. But it turns out the Cards rank last in the USFFL in pass offense at 173 yards a game. And I've kind of noticed leading up to discovering that stat, kind of all year kind of noticed that they've kind of seemed like more of a desire, a push to run the ball than pass, and I'm not following that team closely to know why that is, or if it would work better the other way. I don't know. I just have noticed that's kind of what's been happening. But it's obviously been a rough haul. But we've been talking about how some of these teams that are not the best and they're struggling with better futures ahead, and Cardinals are looking good in real life this year. So I'll be kind of happy for Mr. Tim Hay to get a shot at having a better team in his hands next year. So what do you think about the Cardinals?
Well, it's a pretty good team now, and they took the Patriots to the brink this past week.
That's right.
Zane Gonzalez missed a short field goal.
It was close.
Should have made it. It was either 2-9 or 2-10, and he missed it for the win. And that would have been a nice spoiler win for him. And they have the opportunity to be spoilers going forward. I mean, the Cards are there, and it's the sort of thing where the defensive calls just haven't gone Arizona's way. They're 32nd in guessing pass correctly at 69%. So that's last in the league. Number 1 in guessing run correct at 40%. But
I wonder what they are, how much they guess pass overall.
Yes,
if they're
overall, I can tell you.
Because if you're the worst at guessing pass right, maybe it's a byproduct of uh, guessing pass not as often, if that makes sense.
Oh, it is. I mean, in guessing run a lot. Obviously, you only have two choices, and number one again in guessed right running, and that sort of thing can turn around. I wouldn't expect it to be at that extreme going forward,
Sure.
and if it does, then this team can yeah, no chance of COI, no chance of playoffs. But got the Rams this week, then the Giants, then the Eagles, Niners, and Rams. So a couple opportunities there, two against the Rams, and then a couple, the Niners that are there, Eagles and Giants fighting. So it'd be interesting to see if the Cardinals can play spoiler against some of these squads that are fighting for COI or fighting for playoff spots.
Sure.
It's in the cards for them to do some damage.
Okay. Well, that's going to be the last division. So we really only have one thing left, and we're going to look at the postseason. Let's start doing that. And I actually think let's watch this here. Watch what I'm going to do right here, because I wanted to hide that. We'll look at that in a second. All right. So let's start over here. And this is where we're at right now. So let me kind of show you how I've got this laid out. Your playoff teams are along the left side here in order by seeding. So the Patriots, if the season ended now, Patriots would be your 1 seed in the playoffs. And then 2, 3, 4. The Steelers, Colts, and Chiefs would be the 2, 3, 4 seeds. They're all division winners. That's why you automatically get a bye if you win the division. And so those three division winners would get a bye. And then the 3 wild card teams right now would be the Chargers, Browns, and Bills. And that's through the tiebreaker process. And so the other coding that I did, obviously, in addition to the 1 seed, the only team getting the bye is in light green, the 3 other division winners that will host the wild card round in the other green, and then the yellow is going to be your wild card teams that will be on the road in round 1. Over here where I've got the Seahawks yellow 11-0, that's because the Seahawks have already clinched at least a wild card. The yellow color here for wild card. Seahawks have already clinched at least a wild card. Obviously, then you can see the Packers have already clinched the division, and that's why that's colored green, because they clinched at least the division at this point. They still could possibly get that lighter green for the bye. We'll see how that plays out. But let's look at this. And Anthony, as you're looking at the AFC playoff field, including all those teams out to the right in the hunt, talk to me about what you see and what might sneak up and surprise us as far as what we're looking at here.
So as far as projections go, I see those division winners that you have there holding on to their
all
division.
4.
All 4 for 4. The wild card's a bit of a change. I see Cleveland coming up and taking the number 1 wild card. The Browns, just taking a look at their schedule here in the AFC North, have a key battle against the Titans this coming week for wild card positioning. If they can get past that, then they have the Ravens. But then the Giants and the Jets, 2 very winnable games. Doesn't mean, especially the Giants, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to win them. And then they face the Steelers. Believe it or not, that's not a very versus everybody else. It's not the tippy top of schedule difficulty. So the Browns already with 7-4 they have a game up on the Ravens already. They see, and they have a game up on the Titans as well. So they're going to have to lose ground to fall behind those 2 squads.
Right.
And with those 2 New York games in New York, I think they'll be able to capture that first wild card. Second wild card to the Chargers, and then the third to the Ravens. Ravens have a key win versus the Titans, and that was earlier in the season. There's a good chance that crops up and becomes the decisive blow to the Titans to make them the sort of on the outside looking in. That's on the
All
edge.
right. Okay. So the only one that's not in the playoffs right now that you have actually making it would be the Ravens, is it right?
Yeah.
Instead of the Bills, you have the Ravens making the playoffs. Okay, I got you. So let's look now at the NFC, and then I'll share my picks. So let's go ahead and see what you've got here in the NFC.
NFC, also holding the division leaders as they are. So Seahawks, Packers, Saints, Giants. First wild card to the Rams, so that holding 2. Second wild card to the Falcons, also a hold versus where they are now. And that last wild card, I have in there the Lions.
Wow.
It really would come down to that game versus the Buccaneers out in week 16.
So you have them beating the Bucs in Week 16.
Yeah, having them beating the Bucs in week
Okay.
16, and that would be really the game that would decide whether or not one of those two get in. I have my eyes on the Niners too, and whether they can sneak up. That's certainly within the realm possibility for all the reasons we just talked about.
Sure. All right. So let's go ahead and I'm going to talk about my picks for the same, and they're pretty similar. I'm going to pull mine open here. So this is the picks that I have. And so you'll notice first off that I've got the Steelers instead of the Patriots as the 1 seed. The Steelers actually are down on their conference record is 1 less than the Patriots, but I still think they catch up. I'm just a believer in their momentum. By virtue of the fact that, I said earlier, they've only allowed 7.2 points a game for 5 games in a row. And I'm not a believer in momentum like dice, right? It's not momentum. But what I do believe in is coaches can get in a rhythm. You can get to where you're calling a better offensive flow or a better defensive flow. And I'm just here to tell you, I think Tom's in his zone, especially defensively. I said Tom, I meant Peter. I'm sorry, Peter Shibley. Peter's in his zone. And I think that he's got his Steelers ready to go. So I've got them as the 1 seed, actually passing the Patriots here. They'll still win the division in the East and be that seed, the number 2 seed. Then I've got the Colts winning the division, just like they're set up right now. They only have 1 team remaining on their schedule with a winning record. The Colts do, and that's part of why I think they can hold on. And then I've got me winning the division. It's a tiebreaker with your Chargers at 10-6. And the way I've got that laid out is we're even now. You're going to gain a game on me and be 1 up on me as we go to the final week. And then the Chiefs beat the Chargers in the final game of the year, sweep the series, take the tiebreak, and get that 4 seed by virtue of that. You'll still be the Chargers with the 5 seed. Ravens are going to make it, though, at 10-6. So you and I both have the Ravens sneaking in instead of, let's see, I put them instead of the Browns. Let's see. So I've got the Ravens and the Titans. And the Ravens I have because I know that they're behind the Browns right now, but they have an easier schedule than the Browns. They already have a head-to-head win against the Browns, and they have a better division record against the Browns. And one of the things is I'm looking at tie breaks. One of the first things you do, like if you have a tiebreaker with team for a wild card and it's teams from multiple divisions, and let's say it's the Browns and the Ravens that are tied, but you also have the Bills and the Titans. Well, the first rule of tiebreaker is you have to eliminate all but 1 team from every division. So even though the Browns might beat some of these other teams in a tiebreaker, you have to, if you're the Browns, get out of that tiebreaker with the Ravens if you're tied with them before you can even look at those other tiebreaker scenarios. And so their disadvantage right now to the Ravens is one that I think that I'm going to go ahead and pick the Ravens for that reason.
And that's if they're in a three-way.
Say that again? Yeah.
Right? They all have the same record.
That's right. And then the Titans, I've got them beating the Browns coming up here this coming week. Big game this week, Titans and Browns. I have the Titans winning that game, and by virtue of winning that game, they're going to end up getting a three-way tiebreaker win with the Browns and Bills by virtue of beating both of them head-to-head. So I've got the Titans coming in there. And then down here, I'm like you. I've got the same 4 division winners: Seahawks, Packers, Saints, Giants. Of note, I do have the Seahawks losing the game. Huh?
Sorry to jump in on you. Let's go back just your last point in the AFC before we get too far.
Yeah.
The Titans Browns game will be interesting, and it will, I think, influence which of these scenarios is more correct. The Browns are a lot like the Colts, and Titans have struggled against those strong run teams. It'll be interesting to see, and the Browns live off of guess wrong passing when you bring people up on Chubb, right among the top, if not number one, in short pass wrong attempts are the Browns. So it'll be interesting to see if the Titans can break the mold versus the results against a similar team like the Colts when they face the Browns this week. That should be a really, really good one to watch. So please.
Yeah, I think it really does come down to that Titans-Browns game. I think, like I say, if the Titans win that game, then they have the same record as the Browns, and I start to open up that three-way tiebreak I was talking about that is a real possibility. But right now, I like the Titans. I think they're so balanced that's something that speaks to me. So I think they could be dangerous. So, and frankly, that entire field looks dangerous once the playoffs start. But so again, back to the NFC Seahawks, I do have them losing one game. Packers, Saints, Giants, they're all going to win the division just like they're set up to do right now. The wild card, obviously, everyone's got to go with the Rams. I have the Buccaneers and Falcons staying, so it's the same 7 playoff teams. I do have the Bucs switching positions with the Falcons by virtue of me expecting the Buccaneers to sweep the Falcons in their 2 games that remain between those two. That's just the Buccaneers have that supreme run defense, and it's tough to run on them. And I know that the Falcons have Todd Gurley, and they've been talking about how he's been running better than normal. But if there's a team that you want to have a good carded running back against, it's probably the Buccaneers. So I think the Buccaneers take both those games, and then both teams sneak into the playoffs.
The Buccaneers are a very different team without Ronald Jones.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you faced a Ronald Jones-less Bucs this past week, and he's really struggling, and he should have been struggling to find the ball carriers there. They face each other in 3 weeks and in 5 weeks from now.
Limited his carries.
Sorry?
It limited his carries.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. So you could see Jones after 2 more games, actually 1 more game against the Vikings. Will he be in an overuse scenario? Well, is he going to have to use Jones a lot against the Vikes? That's going to be big determiner there. And I'm not sure where Gurley stands on overuse too. That's something interesting to watch for going forward for the Falcons, because without Gurley, that team becomes very one-dimensional very fast.
No doubt. So let's do some Super Bowl predictions. Let's set up our championship games. Who do you have in the AFC Championship game coming out of your playoff field?
Well, you sort of have 2 different types of teams represented throughout the playoffs. You have what I would call the paper tigers.
And I'm going to pull your playoff teams over here a little bit. I had them right there, right? So I need to hide those rows. I didn't actually make that announcement, but just trust me when I tell you these are the picks that Anthony set up right here. Go ahead, Anthony.
The paper tigers are sort of these offensive teams that can score a lot of points, but not very good defenses at all. Those would be the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Falcons, who have a bit of better defense, but put them in that group. Put the Lions in that group as well. When you're facing these really good defenses and good running attacks, when push comes to shove, I don't think those teams are going to have the ability to hang with those other strong defensive squads that can really run the ball well too. Yeah, so out of the AFC, I see the Steelers and the Colts coming out to the AFC Championship. Of course, it's going to depend on seedings and matchups and that sort of thing. But all things being equal, putting that aside, those are the 2 that I would put at the top. The Patriots play a similar level, same type of ball as the Steelers and the Colts, and indeed they do some things better than those teams, but the offense is just too many notches below to hang with the Steelers and the Colts. So have those 2 teams going to the AFC Championship, and between those 2, the Steelers and the Colts, take the Steelers. The Steelers don't have the best quarterback. They don't have the best halfback. They don't have the best lots of things, but they have a very strong defense.
Oh yeah,
he doesn't play beautifully in the red zone, which is key. And they have an excellent pass rush. I could see the Steelers easily coming out of the AFC this year.
All right, so that's similar to what I've got. I also have the Steelers in the AFC Championship game. But I have them, believe it or not, going up against your Chargers. I made a reference earlier to momentum. I'm a big believer of it in general. And, some of that also is these are new cards to us when we it's not like we had these cards for 6 months and then started our season. We had just got them, and you take some while to get a bunch of games under your belt, and then you should be a little better at figuring out how best to manipulate your various advantages. And so I'm looking at the Steelers allowing 7 points a game basically the last 5 weeks, and I just feel Peter's got that team humming. And then I look at your Chargers on a 7-game win streak right now, and I know you've got that team humming. And I also know that, kind of like Dennis, you know the game pretty well. You kind of know what you're doing with all the rules and everything like that. So I've got the Steelers and Chargers meeting in the AFC Championship game, which means I'm picking you to beat me in the playoffs after winning your division. And in the AFC Championship game, yeah, I can't give you that much rope, Anthony. I got to go with the Steelers and that defense. Not every defense kills, but that one does right now. And so I've got the Steelers making the Super Bowl just like you do. What do you have in the NFC Championship game?
Well, I've been dying to see Seahawks and Packers for a while now. If you've been listening to the broadcast, that would just be a fantastic game. And those are the two that I would expect to come out of this. The Saints have the cards to be right in the mix too. If the Buccaneers make it and they're healthy, they have the cards. The Rams have. It's going to be a brawl in the NFC. There's a number of teams that could come out, but the Seahawks and the Packers stand above.
Yeah.
And of the two, it's going to be a really interesting game. The advantage the Packers have is the poor pass defense of the Seahawks. The advantage the Seahawks have is the 2 off-tackle short gains on the Packers' defensive cards, no linebackers.
Yep.
And Dennis won't be afraid to run the draw. Excuse me. That would induce even more run calls as you sort of want to take the bait on getting 2 linebackers in your zone and the key. And that could actually play into the Seahawks' hands. The cards are with the Packers overall, I would say, but not by much. Obviously, Dennis has that team humming. Both teams are really humming, but one's just humming a little bit more than the other. So I would take the Seahawks in a slight edge, but that should be a fantastic game.
All right, so you've got a Super Bowl repeat from years ago with Seahawks versus Steelers. So I am going to agree with you on the two teams, Seahawks and Packers. I just don't know how you don't pick those. They're both going to get, one gets the bye, the other's going to, the Packers, if they get that second seed, they're going to be, still home at first and the most favorable matchup. I don't know. I still like Seahawks and Packers, just like you. But I'm going the other way. I like the Packers to win it. I'll take their playmakers. I know that, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are pretty awesome in Seattle, but I like the receivers as well in Green Bay. I'll take their quarterback. I'll take their running back. And so I'm going to go ahead and pick the Packers to meet the Steelers. So we both have the Steelers. What do you got? Steelers versus Seahawks, you said. Who do you have winning your Super Bowl?
Well, I really would like to get more into the Seattle offensive line and understand the matchups versus Pittsburgh's pass rushers, because that could really be the difference in that one. You bring those. Interesting the way Peter plays. He's not safety blitzing much. He's just blitzing the linebackers without the benefit of the safety blitz.
Yeah, you don't have to safety blitz that much.
Yeah, with his cards, that's just fine and dandy. It's a real luxury that Pittsburgh has that most other teams in the set do not. And that does two things, obviously. It's not going to help you on draw calls, but okay. You bring those linebackers up when there's not a draw. You got some coverage there on the run, and then you have a fierce pass rush working against that Seattle offensive line. Really diving into those matchups a little bit and seeing what the percentages are might tell the story, but without going too far into it and just looking here, just verifying. Yeah, they got a 12 left end who's an asterisk 1. You got a 12 left outside linebacker who's a 10 star. Then you have an 11 with Bud Dupree, and your secondary guys are 6s and 5s. I mean, those are the best on my team. My Chargers, and those are guys that you just write off on.
I hear you. Yep.
So for that reason, for the pass rush, I would take the Steelers. But it's hard to bet against this particular Seahawks team and how they're being coached right now. But that's where I fall out.
Yeah, that's interesting. I totally respect that. It's so hard to pick against Dennis, but it's a pretty special Steelers team. And I had Steelers against the Packers, and I'm going to go with the Packers. It's a tough call. I wanted to kind of pick the Steelers all the way with that defense, but there's a real good balance there for Green Bay. And so I like the Packers to upset the Steelers, but to beat the Steelers, actually, and win the Super Bowl this year.
Too on the pass rush,
Huh?
I'd like to see the there, and really, it really comes down to that. I mean, if one of these teams can block pretty well against those Steelers, the pass rushers, then the game could easily flip. And I'm not sure. I probably should have taken a look at that. I wasn't prepared to make a Super Bowl prediction, so sorry for not being
snuck it in on you.
Having that level of preparation. But that's really, whether it's the Packers or whether it's Seahawks, how the Steelers can attack those offensive lines could easily make a difference there. And if they can't get to Rodgers, Rodgers can make them pay.
Well, one thing's for sure. This to me looks like, however it ends up shaking out, this is going to be an exciting playoff field. I'm real excited about the playoffs that are coming up. We're about to sign this off. Anthony, did you have anything you wanted to say before we close this out?
Nothing else other than thank you, Tim, for putting this together.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. And I want to say thank you to everybody. If you haven't figured it out yet, this is the league for me. I love the NFL, and I love this game, and I am passionate about this league. And so it is meaningful to me to have 31 other guys in this league that I really don't have to hassle about deadlines or anything, and we just move on about our business, and everybody does their thing. I added the new expectations this year as far as giving us the game number and the scheduled games so that Anthony and I can stay on top of broadcasting. And everybody has just far exceeded my expectations of getting that data to us. And that has allowed Anthony and I the freedom to be very deliberate about scheduling games so we can maximize our opportunities, but still provide, ourselves with a family life, work-life balance, because we can kind of plan on when the games are coming up and stuff. So I want to thank you, everybody, for your efforts are why Anthony and I have been able to cover as many games as we have, and we'll continue to do that. I think I speak for Anthony when I'd say that our plan is to broadcast every single playoff game that we can. We'll have to see, when they're scheduled. But if there's a playoff game, it's my intention to try to get it broadcast. I'm real excited about getting there, and we'll just kind of see how it all shakes out at that time. Nothing better than the USFFL playoff chase. That's what I know. So with that, that's all I've got. Anthony, final word?
Nothing else to add. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your help tonight, Anthony. Your double help. I know you know what I mean. And you guys, everybody else, have a good night. And we're looking forward to the stretch run. Good luck this week. All right.